I'm hearing some music. Does one of you have some?
Not me. I can hear.
There is a little kiddo downstairs, so I'm going to be on mute for the whole talk.
Got it.
He is playing with a new musical toy.
I thought it was really cool tech sound effects.
Oh, no,
I was thinking
cool background music.
I was thinking like waiting room music, like elevator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Or sounds of
I will
people
mute
logging
myself
in.
shortly. Oh, there we go. So we have folks coming on in. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll give it just one more moment for folks to find their way into the room. But if you want to tell us where you're joining from, please let us know. I see folks in various parts of the world here in the chat. Hi, Lorna. Hi, Destiny. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Amanda. Hi, everybody. All right. Yeah, so people are finding their way in. So we will go ahead and get started in a moment. Just a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. Oh, hi. Yeah, Eli's joining from the Muskoka Nation. Awesome. Hi from Gold Coast, Australia. Fabulous. Hi, everybody. So this session is being live streamed to YouTube so that folks who weren't able to register can also watch it. So just be aware that if you ask a question in the chat, your name may come up on the live stream and the recording. Hi there to somebody in Northern Ireland. And as usual, we really encourage you to ask questions, share your own experiences, share your thoughts with the speaker afterwards. So you can just drop your questions in the Q&A box. And without further ado, I am delighted to hand this over to Ciara Borland to introduce our speaker today.
Chiefs, matriarchs, ladies and gentlemen, when thank you for your attendance on this beautiful day. Ciara Borland Schwet, First Peoples Cultural Council in Hachette Osti. My name is Ciara Borland. I work with First Peoples Cultural Council. Luamgadi when Silgawis Shkuwake, Wanda Good, Sawitwiteshkik said. I'm happy to accompany our next speaker, Wanda Good of the Gitsan. Dimechtis Wanda lot sim gaskosh and Hachgitsan Eshwilawish sim alyach. Wanda will tell you about the challenges she has faced as a Gitsan speaker and the challenges of sim alyach in her nation. E dimechtit gaskosh ama hasleilst dabdi when si ich sa nach dit delach dit. She will also reflect on the wonderful work they are doing to breathe life back into Simalyach, the precious language of the Gitsan people. Shkuwech.
Named Ciara. Thank you very much, Ciara. That was beautiful. When I'd like to recognize that I am on the traditional territories of the Gittinyao. I'd also like to thank Samagid Lachagi for giving us this beautiful day. I'd like to thank you all, and I'm very happy to be with you all. Thank you for coming and your interest in our story. We are the Gitsen. Gitsen means the people of the Misty River. We're located along the beautiful Skeena River, Northwest British Columbia, Canada. The Gitsan language, our Simalgach, is a sister language to the Niska and the Tsimshen. The distinction came about when people naturally migrated from the coast inland, and we are the farthest inland of the sister languages, the Gitsan. the languages are very similar. So if I hear someone of the Niska or the Tsimshan speaking, I can understand what they're saying and vice versa. Currently, there are less than 10% fluent speakers in our communities, and in a couple of the communities, there are less than 5%. And we have about 5% silent speakers in our communities, and we'll go into why there are that many silent speakers. They're about my age, maybe a little bit older. The video will go into that. So given the numbers, I would say that Gitxsan Simalgach is now in a critical state, an endangered language on the list of endangered languages in the world. So without further ado, I think Kira will go into sharing the video that my daughter, my beautiful daughter, Raven Good, had created. Simgiget sigidum hanak kan walnil obwilksis ton wille hogyacham qaqan al simgiget skuweich wallan wa Wanda Good wayam qamqsiwa toyarsit samagit lahagi al amasaton melkis samagit sagam hiqaq Vernon Smith La when abskidim skagam toyachsl samagit lahagi nilit no lach wallan qaltepl gitniao qaltepl qaniyaetkum qaason when limpsam qwalqit no agui guhtaakins qamlach yeltu Miriam Dowse when qalimpsam nedit naat en haagl qamsiwamach qsach sim algach wilayam nedit wulash ligidna swatit il dik tiligi khbetech nedit halagiach ligidna lagat odit ton wuladach yuktel wallen giget so accents long dach yuktit ayogum adaurum limichem israchen dit aguyeden dit kwelret nil dem haayem nilach yip dimula hogyaram limsum limchsum skip dimula haldem gotul haslelst Timul plitligit idem willa hogyacham loyul qamaqqas allagats om Sigyon this will quesel dimula ama qandidilstem bekul mismaaxsum get Egyptit si ayok sa hitstit skip al wilpsa walaxens Wilp amadelgas qamqsiwa hidden dit lip ayok dit I haun dit litligit sim algach limichem miluchem isetep qatsqots dit qtsanam il padaqtit kula Lipga tont wilpsa walaxens Amsiwa sawatit il Indian Day School llwyetstit no when hach sim algacham halagiach dit huneim isawatit no il goats iski kan tetixit ton kan wil haundel sim algach Iwan si hach Halagiachan tlagat om no ton luyul willa lark amsiwa when halagiachtit no Iwan gwit gwaden sim algiacham gwit gwaden diml arts in Nedin aguyeden some algiach a little skip. Gausach and dit nom. Gees goed galp dik ep gebiel un gausach gebiel oor. So what did a little silent speaker. Gees goed stint gebiel oor in guksaldum gool some algiach. I waitemen sa bache. Dim so lax and dit some algiach. Alki guhta kinam kan agui guhta kinam dimula dim lepulach dit lepnidit I dim haldem gutit dachgetit I dim aml dimula gande dilstit nittem ganwilt. Amen. I'm Wanda Good. I am born and raised in Gitniao, British Columbia. This is the land of my ancestors, and I am currently working as the program manager coordinator for the Gitsan Indian Residential School program, and more recently have taken on the support work for the survivors of the Indian Day School. Through the First Peoples Cultural Council, we've had the opportunity to take on some initiatives around Sim Algiach, our language. We record the elders and the Sim Algiach speakers. We'll take that recording, we'll take the clips of the words or phrases from it, or stories, or whatever the speaker wants to share, and we'll upload them to the archive for our future generations. We're very pleased that one of our youth has taken up a lot of the initiative to learn the language, to really try to incorporate the culture into his life. We were very excited to offer him a position to become involved on the First Voices Sim Algiach archive team. His traditional name is Sim Get, Jackie Good Jr., and we're very happy to have him on board.
Sim Giget Sigrim Hanok Pools Amasach Skolkanism Clocksum Get Wet to Mulpsnista Cultups Kitiklo and Sotri. The Lidachs was Nahi Achtupas was already Mulpsnista and Sotri. Gosh, Kitiklo. My name's Jackie Good Jr. That's my English name. Back in 2012, I was introduced to the feast hall as Clochsen Get, basically meaning the sunshine, as my mom would put it, or my grandmother in them. I grew up in Gitniao. I'm from Kijikiklo. That's where I originate, but we grew up in my grandfather's village, who is playing a big role in teaching me in my journey with the language. Other than that, you could hear it in the feast hall. I felt that it was important to know the language and understand it, so I continued with learning it and whatnot, even after living in Terrace for quite some time. We moved there in 2010. Being away from the language speakers in the community was a bit of a challenge, but I did have my dad. Most of the time I just remember him waking us up, telling us to wake up and get set, and telling us to get ready. That's how our day started, really. Eventually I caught on to First Voices. Who knew I would have been working with them?
Growing up in Gitniao, we didn't have the luxuries that we have today. We spent a lot of time outdoors. We spent very minimal times indoors. We played a lot. We had lots of adventures. Lots of time on the land to learn with our parents and our grandparents, and for that I'm very grateful.
I've had the opportunity to record Jeets Shirley and Jeets Arena before they had passed on, and that's something that'll stay with me for a long time.
The Kitmonkul Indian Day School started in 1939, and that was in place until 1986, so it closed just recently. Indian Day School was a federally run school that brought in teachers that were non-Indigenous. Who knows where these people came from. They didn't really have any ties to any communities locally. The Indian agent had written to Ottawa basically saying that he felt that the Indians of Kitwankul needed an education, lobbying the federal government to build a school out here. When I started Indian Day School, I was 4 years old. I recall coming into the classroom, sitting down with the other children, not knowing who these women were. They spoke to us, and I remember not knowing what they were saying. And then they addressed me, and I didn't know what to say, so I tried to say something. I'd spoken in my own language, and the woman laughed at me. Seeing children be beaten, children be belittled, children be yelled at, children yelling and screaming and running from the teachers, strappings with big yardsticks, strappings with big belts. I had seen 2 of my brothers knocked out by teachers there. That resulted in so much harm and so much trauma to our Indian residential school and our Indian Day School survivors. I stopped speaking when I was 14, when my father passed away, and I was a silent speaker for about 40 years. My siblings had stopped speaking the language as well. We were silenced. Which means they silenced us. That is my biggest regret in life, is not handing down and passing down the language and more of the culture to my children and to my grandchildren. The language was not allowed. It was illegalized by the Canadian government, as was the feast, the Litligit, as was the dances, as was the totems, as was the singing, the drums.
I'm kind of scared as we continue going on with losing elders. We're actually losing the language too and whatnot. Some language have died, but I believe that they've just gone to sleep.
In 2020, the Kitwankul Indian Day School still stood, and it was a stark reminder of the years of shaming that went on in that building. So when it was scheduled to be demolished, we decided that we would go as survivors, and I went in front of the school and I called back my own spirit that had been traumatized and left there, and called back the spirits of my brothers. And not only that, I called back our language. I called back our language, our own mother tongue, not only for just us, but for our future generations.
It's our identity, really, and that's something that we should never lose as a nation. I find myself wanting to teach my nieces and nephews the language. Teach them who they are, where they come from.
Just recently, we are experiencing more and more of our survivors are coming back and saying, hey, I do want to learn the language and I do want to learn the culture. Even after Indian Day School had closed, being ridiculed by other speakers because we didn't speak properly. Even to this day, we still have a couple of individuals in the community who will laugh at others who are trying to take up the language, which is shameful, which is regretful, because in order to bring back the language, we all have to step up and be kind and be nurturing and be understanding of the history that our people have experienced when it comes to the attempted genocide of our Alogigit all the way across the country and across the globe, and to stop that violence against one another. Those learned behaviors, we have to check it as soon as we realize that that's what we're doing. We're beating each other down. We are playing the role of the nun. We're playing the role of the priest. We're playing the role of the teachers that were in the Indian day school. The memories would have a negative impact and a negative effect on anyone's education.
I've been thinking about the times I went to a school in Terrace. It was important to me that I had ties with the Nishkas and Jimson and Taltans. We would talk about our similarities and differences, and quite a few times we noticed that we had a similar dialect. There is for sure some good times and bad. One of my experiences, I just simply mentioned to my buddy that in Gitsan that I needed a bathroom. My teacher overheard me and she kind of took offense to it. She sent me to the office, which was pretty bad, of course.
An Indigenous family in a larger urban center creates and has its own challenges. There's a lot of racism there. There's a lot of marginalization there. And there still exists today animosity toward First Nations people.
I did happen to feel ridiculed and shamed because it was just something so little to talk about in the class.
We're no better off now than we were back then.
There's still some of those challenges out there. That's the thing that we shouldn't have to go through that nowadays. As Indigenous person out there in the world, thinking that time period is done, it's long gone, but sometimes it still happens.
I still feel shame and embarrassment when coming to speak the language because it's something that was ingrained in us as children. That's one of the major underlying issues that remain today, not just the individual pain, but the ancestral pain that has been passed down from generation to generation. When teaching language or culture, one of the experiences that a survivor will have, including myself, was a feeling of loss and grief. So when those feelings of loss and grief come up, the first response is fight or flight. And many of our survivors will flee because the emotions are just too great. The challenge is to keep the clients engaged and to provide the necessary support through this. And it's a learning process for all of us because we're all on the same boat. What we need to do is bring back the natsits and the nayet within us that will say, note you self-check. We are very respectful people. We don't laugh at each other. Like you're to help others, especially those who are downtrodden and poor. The only way that we can do that is through language and through culture, and to bring that back to our children and to our grandchildren.
I'm ready to get and see the man when I do a look squeeze. Somalia. Get to the garden, Alja. On help cover Kalims, cover Govilses. To man Joch Kalenum. Yep, skidum Talachti, Somalia. Skidum Talachti, Somalia. To me, scholen die Adau and Ayoro. Naar een ooit op skidum de Soulaxens. Cover Kishoda exit. Achterwolle scholen kobe marazelees adaugend ajong. Ze nede te laakjes Somalia gaan. Naar een oost am radio en herels de Wanda en groep Dulit Somalia. I'd like to see a lot of young people get into it. That's why I said earlier, I'm glad to see this group pushing more Somalia on our young people.
Simgiget kan sigidum hanak kan nil obulkses. Yuklum yetim skat isa niton siwalaksendil simagit skagam lacha el gitsgukla lam. When hlisl hatleilst abskidum yetim oyachs niton ton de mula skat isa yetim limich I ton dem yetem sim halait oyachsem sim gigedem gitten yaw when a nacht ditem I litchum lach yipsem yetem sim halait gitsgukla go get ton lachsem get nitem yetel sim halait why what hana, hana, hefo payana, hana, hefo payana, hana,
Does it mean for your beautiful Algach words? Skuwech and I are now going to discuss a little bit of some of the points that she wants to emphasize from the messages shared in the video. And then after that, we'll have an opportunity for everyone to ask some questions. So firstly, Skuwech, would you please talk a little bit about the local language champions and how they inform the work that you're doing today to breathe life into Algach?
Well, my first memories of being raised in Gittinyao was that of being unilingual, speaking Gitsan only. And my first memories around work being done for Algach was when linguists Lonnie Hindle and Bruce Rigsby came into the Gitsan communities to assist the people with the development of printed dictionaries. Extensive work was done to teach the Rigsby spelling convention to our communities. After Rigsby left, Jay Powell came in and he assisted the community with the development of some workbooks that were to be used in the classrooms. And we still have these printed books today. And those also followed the spelling conventions of Bruce Rigsby, the Rigsby spelling convention. So for this reason, this is why we still use this spelling convention at our community level. More recently, we have a number of language champions that have been working on initiatives, language champions such as Smogit Mali, Glenn Williams. He led us to a gathering, and we then created a 10-year plan. And what this 10-year plan involves is a year-by-year approach on our target groups, etc. In that plan. One of our specific target groups would be, for example, the young parents that have their children come to the immersion school, the language nests, and the silent speakers, because who better to speak and take up the language again but our silent speakers, the ones who understand but for whatever reason don't speak. And we have another language champion such as Dr. Arthur Matthews. He worked with UNBC around some Gitsan work, as well as he spearheaded the work that we are now doing with First Voices, and that is to archive the Gitsan Sim Algich. We record the language and we load it up to First Voices with the support and help of First Peoples Cultural Council. We have Samagit Ray Jones, Nisnosh, as well, who he and others worked with the University of British Columbia's linguistics department, and they did similar work to archive language, to record the speakers, and to have it stored. This year, we will begin to transfer that work over to the work that we've done in First Voices. So we're very, very excited about that. And then we have our local language champions, the teachers that speak learner classes or teach learner classes, like Loretta Morgan, Audrey Sherry, Cheyenne Morgan, Skyanne. She does a summer fish camp and she teaches full immersion to attendants there, young people. And of course, the silent speaker class that we've taken on, we've done it once and hopefully we will do it again. We at the Git Center eternally grateful for the language champions who had the foresight to begin saving the work for future generations. But despite all of this work, we see the language has dwindled. The speakers have, the number of speakers has decreased to less than 10% in our communities. So we are very hopeful, but it, in my opinion, has dwindled down to a critical state right now.
So why do you think that is right now?
I think the reason for that, of course, was outlined in the video that we'd watched that was created by our youth, and that is the stigma that's attached to speaking the language. And that's an effect of the Indian residential school and the Indian day school for having shamed and beaten the language out of us, really.
So then what is the role of healing from the damage of Indian residential school and Indian day school in the life of Sim Algich?
So we conducted a survey of our community members, and one of the questions was, what more would you like to see in regards to, say, services or support services? And the majority of people wanted more language and more culture and more interaction with elders. And when teaching the silent speaker class, I realized in order for those to begin to speak, like for those that already understand the language, but for whatever reason don't speak, in order for them to speak, it would require a lot of addressing the stigma and the trauma and the shame of actually speaking. And this will take a lot of healing. And I say that from a personal experience. And I would say that it would also take a lot of support from the educational institutions. We are currently developing a education curriculum that will incorporate the history of the Indian residential school and the impact that it has had on the Gitxsan people. And once it's finalized, then we will approach the education minister and have lobby for them to incorporate this part of Canadian history into our education schools.
So changing gears a little bit, how do you feel that present day or up and coming language champions in Indigenous communities honor one another and can honor each of their unique journeys?
Yeah, like I indicated earlier, we have a number of initiatives around Simalga, our language, many language champions. We have the language nest in Gitwankach, which is called the Wilpsawalaksa. And we have, of course, our First Voices archiving project. And we have our language learner classes. And we tend to get caught up in working in silos, and we get caught up in dialect differentiation, and that creates barriers to growth. So I think it's time to collaborate and collaborate more, not only within our own nation, but start to collaborate with our sister languages, our sister tribes, because I know that they have their own wonderful initiatives going. And I think if we collaborate as a region, we can start to get more commitment from government to support what we're doing. Because right now, the federal government is funding the language, but the provincial government have ceased funding First Peoples Cultural Council. And also, I think that would help us to, like I referred to earlier, we could lobby the federal or the provincial government to fund a 10-year plan so that we would not have to year after year apply for funding and then year after year submit reports on the work that we're doing. We in Canada here, the First Nations people are the most audited people, I think, in the world. We're audited every year, and we have to submit very, very comprehensive narrative and financial reports, even if we were to apply just for, say, a $5,000 grant. So if we can get a core funding for the full 10 years, then that would help us move forward and grow the language and provide a little bit more freedom as well.
So more broadly speaking, before we move into the Q&A questions, because I do see them rolling in,
Okay.
How do you think mainstream society can become more aware of Indigenous languages and gain some understanding of the challenges faced by Indigenous peoples today, such as what you were just mentioning about heavy auditing?
Yeah, it has taken 100 years, I think, of deliberate policy by the Canadian government of the decimation of Indigenous culture and language through government legislation. One, it removed culture from people by illegalizing dance, drum, feasting, and cultural ceremony. Two, it removed children from their families to kill the Indian in the child. And I think it will take the same amount of political will to begin to reverse this damage and start to nurture the culture and language once again. I think one, we could make positive changes to the education curriculum to include the history of Indigenous peoples and the wrongs committed by the governments of the day, and have government support language revitalization on a long-term basis. And two, collaborate with our sister languages to grow some algach at a regional level. I think those are a really good first two steps. And I think this is required at this time because our languages are at a critical state, and it would be a good first step moving into this next decade.
Mia. So our first Q&A question has come in from an anonymous attendee who is asking about dialect and community collaboration in the context of the spelling system. So this attendee says, you mentioned that you all use the Rigsby spelling conventions. I know for our community, we have some different dialects, and therefore, despite having a set alphabet, there is no official spelling or writing convention to honor all dialects. Does Gitxsan have an official spelling or writing system? How does this take dialect into account? If there are other dialects inside of Gitxsan, which we know there are, how has this helped or hindered teaching language to different level of speakers of different ages? So number of questions in there, but I guess we can start with, is there a standard writing system, and how does it account for dialect? Or does it at all?
When Bruce Rigsby came in, he was here for quite some time and spent a lot of time in each of the Gitxsan communities. In the west here, in the gates of the Gitxsan, we have a Western dialect, and then in the east we have the Giganich Eastern Gitxsan dialect. Rigsby spent time in the Western Gitxsan and the Eastern Gitxsan, and spent a lot of time teaching the Rigsby convention in both West and East. So that has been a standard convention that we've used since the early 70s. And of course, that would be the commonly understood spelling convention that we use here at the Gitxsan since the 70s.
So I guess the answer to the first part of that question would be yes, there's the Rigsby spelling system.
Yes.
And it works more or less for both of the two primary dialect groups, the East and the West.
Yes.
Okay, and then the second part of the question is, how has this spelling system that accommodates the dialects helped or hindered teaching language to different levels of speakers and at different ages?
So personally, from personal experience, it has taken just a deliberate effort on my part to learn the spelling convention and the sounds and the consonants, vowels. And I can see the challenge that it would pose to any learner. And what our learners classes have done is, rather than the instructor teaching the spelling convention, they encourage the learner to just listen phonetically and write it down how they hear it, so that when they they read it and repeat it to themselves. They know, because they're doing their own writing of it, so that they can take it home and they can practice it. And then we can worry about using a standard spelling convention if they want to come on to, say, using a learning tool like First Voices. And then there we have a section where you can jump on and say, how do you say the long A, or how do you say the guttural sounds that we have in our language? How is that spelled? And it's right there on First Voices. And we also do that within the language classes online, the learning groups that we have created online.
I can show that quickly.
Sure.
So this is the voices, and then here is the alphabet. And the alphabet is clickable, so like the back G, like Wanda was talking about.
Ka. Kan.
And then you can click through, and there's also lists of words, which they take a while to load if I'm also screen sharing, so I'll stop there. Okay, our next Q&A question. Another anonymous question is, have you all conducted virtual language classes? And if so, how have they gone and what you learned from them? And if not, are you considering this?
So we started a Facebook learning group. Anyone can start a Facebook learning group. And the cool thing about the Facebook learning group is that you can create what's called guides. And underneath each of these guides, you can create units. I'd call them units, but they're called guides in Facebook. And say, if you wanted to teach greetings, and within our Facebook, one of the guides is greetings, another is weather, another is command phrases. And what we did last year was we planned for a virtual year-end feast, a litligit, what's commonly known as a potlatch. And what we did was we called out all of our learners to participate. We had them send in their learning videos, say do a selfie video of them themselves speaking Gitsen and what they've learned from the Facebook learning group. And we then sent them a participation appreciation gift for it. We had participants from as far as New York State. We have Gitsen people living in New York State, and they participated in our Facebook learning group, and they submitted their learning participation videos, which was very cool. We were very surprised with the success of it, and we will continue to grow that Facebook group. We even had one of our, of course, we all know young people are always on their gadgets, so we thought we would meet them where they are and make it easier for them to access. So we've been doing some Gitsen, some Algach TikToks, so that the learner can read along as the speaker speaks with the captions. As well, we even did Talking Tom, and that's on my YouTube. And you use the little app, and you speak, and then the learner can speak Gitsen along with Talking Tom. And we called him Sim Algechem Tom. It's very cute.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question from, I believe the name is Eli Rowland. Apologies if my pronunciation is not great there. Would you be able to speak more about the language nests?
So the language nests are funded by First Peoples Cultural, and they follow the Maori model. Am I right, Kira?
Yes.
Yeah, and the language nest is full immersion language speaking instructors, and they teach the children 5 and under. But within our nation, the community of Gitwangach also teaches, I think, up to grade 3. I'm not 100% sure, but it's very, very cool to see that the speakers come and they teach the children in full Gitsan immersion, and the children then just pick up the language naturally that way.
They're like sponges.
Yeah, did you want to speak a little bit about the Maori model, or do you have more information on that, Kira?
What I'll do is when you're answering the next question, I can drop the link to our information about that program in the chat. I don't want to take away from your time.
All right.
Another question, what do you do to build pride and confidence in your language and culture among the young generation growing up today?
So I guess the only thing that you can do is, as anyone of us as community leaders and elders, is to role model a healthy way of life, and to always show up to anything and everything. And what I've made practice of in the last 5 years since I've taken back up my language is always to begin in public speaking, always to begin a sentence with Gitsan and then follow it up with English, and then another sentence in Gitsan, and then follow it up with English. And then I explain to the audience that the reason that I do this is this is why I lead with Gitsan and then use English. When because we were the language was beaten out of us as children, and to this. So this is how I choose to communicate now, and it does make. I've had really good feedback from community members, fellow speakers, learners, and youth on this approach, and I would encourage all language speakers to take that approach as well, and that is why I asked Kira when she would introduce, to start with one sentence Gitsan and then the next English, one sentence Gitsan and the next English, so that the learner can hear the sentence, but then also hear the interpretation of that as you're going.
Just a couple more questions here. I think we have maybe time to get to them all. Tony Woods asks another question. Do you find it difficult to attract attention to traditional culture and language when you are having to compete with all the modern distractions like TV, movie, internet, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's common across the globe that our youth and our young people will get to a certain age and they'll move off to the urban settings, or our youth get caught up in the gadgets and things like that. And I think it's very common across the globe, a common theme and challenge to our Indigenous language and language speaking communities that remain. And like I said, we try to get a little bit more innovative with it, and we're definitely trying to get to have the ear of the Minister of Education in British Columbia so that we can bring this and make it a core curriculum within our education system, so that when the kids don't have their gadgets at school, we have their undivided attention, and we can incorporate it into the day-to-day education system.
I was just answering a question in the chat about immersion camps. One more question we have here. The Heshkwit language program. I don't know who is asking from over there, but I would bet it's Chutska Rorik. The Heshkwit language program asks, what is the age group most common amongst language learners?
The age group that we have found are young mothers. They bring their little ones to the group. We've taken them before COVID times. Loretta and Audrey have taken them out and onto the territories and taught them about the harvesting of cedar, the harvesting of berries, preserving food, and preserving salmon, and doing it all in Gitsan. And currently, we're all faced with this challenge of COVID and not being able to do that. So we're trying to get a little more innovative. And I guess the one little silver lining was being forced to get innovative and taking up this Facebook learning group. So yeah, in a one sentence, young mothers are the most interested in the language learning.
It's not quite one, so I'm going to quickly sneak in one last question that just came in. Sylvia asks, do the young people who do speak Gitsan incorporate English words into their language, just like youngsters all over the world? And can you, or I suppose, how do you cope with this?
So, to be honest, I think every speaker of the Gitsan now incorporates English words into the language, because we don't have English or Gitsan terms for everything in our language, because of course we don't have a word for computer, because we didn't have computers back then. So and language will naturally change and naturally evolve, and we're doing the best we can to archive the fluent speakers, so that we can teach the grammar as we know it today, but fully appreciating and understanding that the language will change, but the important thing is, and here once again, we can get caught up in different dialects and different ways that people speak, but the most important thing is that people are speaking. That's first and foremost. And the one thing that I really would like to acknowledge is not a little tidbit, but a great teaching that my friend Kira here had expressed during the First Peoples Cultural First Voices training that I'd been to. She said, when there was a question about different dialects and the way people speak and what's right and what's wrong, and could we vet when we see that people are speaking wrong, and Kira's answer to that was, she learned from an elder that everything is gold, and just record any and all of the speakers that want to be recorded, any of all the speakers that are available today. And that really hit me, because I thought about it and I thought, okay, if I'm recording Joe and I think that Joe has said something wrong, Joe is an ancestor to all of his future generations, and everything that he has to say is gold. So thank you, Doyle Saint-Mean, Kira, for that one teaching that I carry all to this day.
We have to say to Skiak Hector Hill from Gitsugukla for that one. Those were his words to me.
Wonderful. And we look forward to transferring a lot of Hector Hill's work over to First Voices through the University BC collaboration that we're doing now. So thank you, Hector.
And introyasitnin to you now, Wanda, as we come to a close. Are there
Thank
any
you.
closing words that you'd like to express before we say Jimokya Aitnisam to everyone?
Sangit dem Doyachs Hanak and Jeplisha Elston. I'd like to thank the people, the organizers that brought this gathering together. I'd like to thank all of the participants who take some time to listen in. I'd like to thank or ask all of the youth of our nation to relax and to learn Gitsan. I will see you again. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Wanda. This was a wonderful talk. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with us all. And thank you, Kira, for your hosting. We really appreciate you being here too. Thank you,
Kira.
to all the participants, and we hope you will join us again in about 3 hours for our next talk from Candice Kruger, who will be talking about her work to revitalize Ugambe language in Eastern Australia through music. That'll be a great session as well. So again, thank you, Wanda. Thank you, Kira. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. See you soon.